So a lot of people, when they first were introduced to cryptokubrology, it came along with this thing called subliminal bears, and I get a lot of flack for that. I mean, I still maintain that the subliminal bears are there, that they're put there, and I don't know what they are. And when I met Alex Fulton, my friend here, who was working on cryptokubrology with me, we call it Crypto K for short because it's easier to say. So we started working on Crypto K and together, and that's this methodology for figuring out things like what are the subliminal bears doing there, and many other questions that emerge once you start looking at films, Kubrick films particularly, in this particular way. And I think you, Alex, got quite interested in this because of its relationship to synchronicity, sync watching films. And
Yeah.
that's how you got into this, right?
Sync and conspiracy theory, sort of, as well. Just the sort of intersection between the study of synchronicity, which up until this stuff, in a lot of cases, seemed very kind of light and fluffy and doesn't really take a lot of darkness into account, like the darkness that exists in the world. But Crypto K seemed to marry the darkness with the sort of methodology of looking at films and reality in this certain way. And I was thinking that Crypto K is kind of like it's a methodology and it's a filtering mechanism for like the raw material of reality, um, where you take whatever it is, almost it applies to almost everything, and you look at it with this certain filter is the word, and it kind of spits out stuff back at you. And one of those things is probably the subliminal bears. And for me, when I first read and looked at the subliminal bear stuff, um, I didn't like immediately swallow it, but it made sense. And a lot of the imagery that you were kind of putting out was kind of undeniable. Like in The Shining, especially the bears, they don't
The
have
yellow poster.
the yellow poster is a good example of one that's like when it's there, and you can't not see it. Um,
That's
but like, there's just what you called the overt bears, which are all over The Shining anyway. I mean, the bear is obviously a giant theme, and it didn't really strike me as that much of a stretch to say that as you know wrote, like that the mise en scène of the film was specifically constructed to evoke the bear and the image of the bear. And
and that's been sort of the quest, is to figure out why the bear, what what is going on here really. I mean, once you get into it to the level that we're kind of looking at this right now, it's this vast puzzle that you're looking at. It's a maze, it's a matrix. It's got rooms, it's got corridors. You go down this way, it's got dead ends. It's got forks in the road, and it's all sort of gathered together by looking at it. And I love the way you said that. It through a filter. It's a filter mechanism. It's numerically based, and it's got a lot to do with time, the durations, time intervals, and we see Kubrick sews his films together using these principles, and it's like repeated repetitions of tropes, uh, broadening the term of what a trope is, how they're used, the actual agency that it seems that the use of tropes is trying to employ.
when you say trope, define trope. What trope means in this context.
Right. That's trope. The word usage of the word trope is fairly recent. I think it came along with game theory and managing characters in games, and the attributes of the characters in games and the actions thereof. The way I use the term trope in movies is it is an encapsulation of an action, an idea, examples of which, like I have a sort of a catalog of tropes that are used particularly in Kubrick films. The rising agent. This is a broad trope term that encapsulates all these little moves that you see in Kubrick films that you wouldn't ordinarily notice unless you were looking at them through this filter. They're just mundane actions, like the act of picking up a fork and putting food in your mouth, or crossing your legs, or rising stairs, or getting into an elevator, or wearing a jacket that says Flyers on it. All rising agent tropes. And it's the management of these tropes, the trafficking of these tropes, that defines a Kubrick film. Pretty much all Kubrick films. And Alex and I have found that not only does The Shining sink to itself on several different levels, it syncs with every other Kubrick film. If you start them at zero, all the films at zero, and play them at the same time, and watch them all at the same time, you'll notice, if you examine it on the terms of tropic resonance, which is the sort of movement and expression of these tropes, you'll find that it's each movie mirrors the other movie in very specific ways at key times, right across the board. And each movie is an echo, a mirror, a reflection, a repetition of development of tropes from all the other movies. And then we can take it one step further and break it out and look at, movies that aren't Kubrick films. Like, in other words, all other movies. And you find the application and employment of this method, these tropes, these numbers, through just about everything you look at. And depending on how hard you look at it and how much time you spend on it, you can pull the darndest things out of it that will just, raise the hair on the back of your neck, because it's just so strange.
There's been more than one person who's contacted me on Twitter, and I think you can say the same thing, that has said, this stuff scares me. Like, there's something wrong about this, or something, like, just people that seem like they're having a bad trip almost. And it does have that effect, because it is sort of like, as if it's a filtering mechanism. You could also say something like LSD is a filtering mechanism, or it's like opening the filter, maybe, and just letting in everything. This is way more controlled, but it has the same potential to communicate ideas and strange but very specific concepts. And it almost really begins to tell its own story that's pretty much unrelated to the content of whatever it is that you're looking at. Yeah, it starts talking to you.
The thing starts becoming self-referential, just like the movies. So you're looking at self-referential movies that synchronize with themselves in different sections of the movie, or sort of echoes and mirrors of previous sections of the movie. And then you notice that this effect extends out beyond the movie into other movies. And then you notice that, of the same artist. And then you notice that the effect extends outward to pretty much all movies from all artists at all times. Ever since the invention of photography and cinema and media. And so this then becomes a sort of media-based phenomenon. This filtering mechanism. What is it filtering? It's filtering media, which is in print, which is in film, which is in audio, which is in everything. It's literally the media. It's in the headlines. It's in the novels. It's in the it's in the Holy Bible, and that's the most striking element of uh, the creepy factor. When you start extending your examination of Crypto-K into the Bible, which is just replete with numbers. The whole numbering system of the Bible is just made for this. And when you apply it to that, well, I mean, it's astonishing, and it's very, very creepy, and it's because it's real. Like you're sitting here looking at this stuff with your, and it's actually having a sensory impact on you.
I would say Crypto K really puts a new spin on the McLuhan term, the medium is the message, um, because what it does, this filtering mechanism reveals the message in a way, or a message through the medium.
And whatever medium you happen to be examining, whether it's a film, a short, a commercial, a rock video, a rock song, a, you know, you can even look at lifespans in terms of an event, because the only information we get on a person's life, say Abraham Lincoln, is through media. It's all every bit of it comes to us through media, through somebody wrote it down, somebody said it, some historian documented it. It's none of us witnessed the events from the distant past, but we all have advanced knowledge or intricate knowledge about those events that we didn't witness, all through media. And Crypto-K kind of informs that this media, it's almost like invisible writing, where there's another hand involved in the creation of any media. There's the author, and then there's some force that makes the author encrypt his work into a format that we can then later decode as Crypto-K. And it's astonishing how it just keeps coming up. It all seems to be centered around Stanley Kubrick, and in that is the most uncanny part of this whole thing. How Kubrick, well, he's synonymous with the number 237 because of its appearance in The Shining, and him having to change it from 217 in Stephen King's novel. That's so, I don't know, that's somebody's request. They didn't want that room number being, they didn't want people to be afraid. They didn't want their business being interfered with by nonsense coming from moviegoers. So yeah, he changed it to 237. And what we find is that 237 is just sort of integral to Kubrick's life. His lifespan is 70 years, 32 weeks, exactly, which is a reverse 237, 70 years, 32 weeks. And if you subtract that amount from the number of days in the 20th century, Kubrick's lifespan from the number of days in the 20th century, you're left with 10,732 days, which is another expression of a reverse 237. And it just keeps going on and on. Kubrick was born on the seventh month, 26th day, 726. He died on the third month, seventh day, 37. So if you subtract 726 and 37 from 1,000, you're left with 237. So we're going to do episodes on all of these sort of little mysteries that we find in cryptokubrology research. We're going to deal with that Kubrick's lifespan conundrum. We're going to deal with just about everything you can think of with regard to movie analysis through the lens of cryptokubrology. We're going to do a little television series here on YouTube, and it's going to lay out all the facets of cryptokubrology as we've sort of discovered them over the last several years. Alice and I have been working at this for combined man hours over a decade, and that's a lot. And we found a lot of things, a lot of things. So we'll be talking about everything in this upcoming series. We'll talk about the number 237 appearing in hundreds of movies before and after The Shining to a astonishing degree. You're looking at this and you're thinking, how did I not notice this before? It's everywhere, right?
It is everywhere. And that's not the only number.
There's 5 numbers in this series that we kind of figured out through trial and error and just application. It's 42, 153, 237, 666, and 1776. Now, several, if not all of those numbers are already previously famous in their own right, just, just upon first glance. And they all actually work together and fit together. And through an application of this number series, you can master cryptokubrology. You can find, using this as a flashlight, as a way of looking at the history of film, history itself, you turn the light on dark rooms everywhere, and it just jumps out at you. The things you find, even locally, say around The Shining, will blow you away. Like, tell them about the Jennifer O'Neill, Bugs Bunny Roadrunner
Right.
situation.
Well, in The Shining, Danny is seen watching the film Summer of 42 on the television. And, of course, also he wears a shirt with the number 42 on his sleeve. And this has all been pointed out before. And when you look at 237, it's 2 times 3 times 7 is 42. Those are things that people have noticed before. But what nobody's noticed is that the actress who appears in Summer 42, she's in the movie within the movie of The Shining, is Jennifer O'Neill. She's the older woman talking to the young boy on screen. And what's interesting is that Jennifer O'Neill was also in David Cronenberg's film Scanners, which is another way of saying The Shining. Scanners is about psychic, a form of remote mind control. So the crazy thing here is that Scanners was released exactly 237 days after The Shining. And what's even better is that it has the number 237 on its poster. And in fact, the entire plot centers around, essentially, patient 237. There are 237 scanners in the world. The number's never said in the movie, but it's implied, and it's on the poster. And again, it released exactly 237 days after The Shining. The Shining on May 23rd, 1980, and Scanners on January 14th, 1981. So that's amazing. But then the kind of logical question there is, so what if you go back 237 days before The Shining? And then if you do that, you find out that the movie that came out on that day was the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner movie, which was also known as the Chase movie. The crazy thing is that that movie is also in The Shining, because Danny is watching it on TV, at least 2 times, I think, while he's wearing Bugs Bunny on his sweater. He answers to "What's up, Doc?" And engages in an epic chase with his deranged father in a snow maze at the end of the film. So there's tons of overt kind of Bugs Bunny, Roadrunner, Wile E. Coyote references in the Shining, and that movie came out 237 days before The Shining. So that's like an example of what in Crypto we call a parent thesis, where you have 2 points in time that are centered around a third middle point. So that makes it the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner movie is the first point, The Shining is the middle point, and then Scanners is the third point. And it all kind of ties in together around this number 237
And television
in television.
and media and if you actually watch those films, this goes way beyond just that mere connective tissue of 237 days connecting these two films that actually appear in The Shining. That Danny, I think, is watching both of them. So then there's all sorts of things you can do with that to broaden that matrix and turn it into like a spider web. We got 3 points here, but you can add more and more and more and more information to this, matrix as you're developing it. And the whole thing falls open as just what is going on. It all lines up across in terms of these this 5 number series, this 42, 153, 237, 666, 1776. And from that, you just are flooded with questions, such as, how can this be? What is going on? Do these people know that they're putting this stuff in their films and that they're lining their films up and that they're releasing them on these particularly congruent days and important days and days that sort of make this whole thing look like a construction? Because this 237-day satellite kind of situation is repeated just about everywhere. I mean, not in terms of necessarily 237 days. You can go 237 weeks. You can go 2,370 days. You can go any kind of expression through time of these numbers. You can go 42 days. You can go 4,200 days. You can go 42 weeks. And you just look. And you may find something on either side of a hinge point, and you may not. But if you do, you will often find that it is related in just such a way as Alice explained. The Shining Scanners, Bugs Bunny, Roadrunner movie matrix is all based around this thing we call tropic resonance. In this case, the trope is 237.